I'm Jaimie Hodari. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Industrious. And Industrious is essentially, we're the third largest flex workplace provider in the world.
When you say the third, who are in front of you?
There's two very large brands, WeWork, who everyone knows, and then there's a holding company called IWG that owns many brands people might be familiar with, Regis, Spaces, etc. And then after us, it gets much smaller. There aren't really many companies that are global in our industry.
I just left the talk you gave in front of a 200 or 300 people stage, and I can tell everybody was blown away by some of the data you were showing. And what is interesting is that we've been talking a lot about data in our industry, and some of the things you shared today were really eye-opening. One that I want to mention is your correlation between commute and expectation of a space. Like the standard out of it. Can you talk a little bit about it?
So we've always tried very hard to take a somewhat data-driven approach to what is a great workplace, why would people come in, how often are they coming in, and what we found is in this day and age, there's a lot of noise. Like you would look at what I would think of as a good Industrious, and there's people coming in 5 days a week, people coming in one. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason. You'd look at a not great Industrious, same thing, and eventually what we realized is you have to control for commute, because much more so than in the past, someone who lives 25 minutes away from an office is not going to go more than a couple times a week. But someone who can walk 4 minutes or get on a little scooter or a bike, they will most days wake up and head into the office, and then you can actually look at the impact of quality on that. That a neighborhood workspace has to be passable, but it's still better than sitting all day in your living room. If you're going to have people come to a city center, if they live in the suburbs or they live in Brooklyn and they have to come to Times Square, it really has to be a very exceptional, very welcoming, very engaging experience.
I am wondering if how you work that out. What I'm saying this is, I'm sure you know Nick Bloom, who shares a lot of data, and he actually explained how they go about data. They first have a little either hypothesis or assumption, and then they check and look at the data. Did you also have that little intuition that would say maybe people, when they drive, they want something more, or when they don't drive, they're okay to have something a little different? Where did it come from?
I think it's a good point that sometimes people think of working from data or running a business or any sort of product development that you basically look at all these dots and just figure out where the correlations are. And sometimes that happens, but you're right. The vast majority of time, the scientific method works via hypothesis testing. You have to have a point of view and then test the validity of that point of view. And the impact of commute on how frequently people come, how often they churn, almost any salutary metric related to the workplace, we did have a strong hypothesis because we experienced it in our own lives. So I live in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. There's an Industrious, maybe 5-minute bike ride from my house. And there's probably 25, 27 Industriouses in New York. So I have a lot of choice of where to go in. And then we have some stunning ones in Manhattan. And if I looked at my own behavior, essentially what I did actually, I thought I was going into Manhattan 3 days a week and working from Brooklyn 1 or 2 days a week. And sometimes you can be delusional. I actually looked at the data of my last 6 months and I was like, what planet am I on? I've been going into the Brooklyn one 3 or 4 days a week and going to Manhattan 1, 2, maximum 3 days. And seeing that about my own behavior also suggested to me, if I run a workplace company and I have this much of a revealed preference for walking or biking to work, I guarantee it's very likely that the broader world is experiencing the same set of pressures. And I love the subway.
Yeah, for sure. But things have changed even in New York. That creates a different commute. Something that also was very relieving when you were, or like really impactful when we were talking on stage, is your origin story. And that's something we see in every CEO. They carry that origin story for as long as the business exists. And going back to it always gives you the clear direction of where you're going. Can you tell me more about it?
I like that way of, sometimes it's easy to think of it as something frozen in amber. It's a story that you describe to describe something that happened in the past, but you're right. There's elements of it that to this day are woven into the DNA of the company and influence how we choose to run this business, what we choose to honor, what we choose to push on. I was running essentially an education organization that created universities in East Africa. And I'm still very proud of that organization. It's called Kepler. I got a lot of meaning from it. So I wasn't really looking for a side hustle, but our US offices were in a sort of shared workplace, and I had a meeting with our largest funder, and the conference room table was sticky, and there were light bulbs out, and it was like 10 degrees too hot. So I moved the meeting to a coffee shop, and I was so upset that night. I'm paying for this workplace, and the most important meeting in my life, I'm doing it in a coffee shop. And that day I said there must be so many companies that want a workplace they can feel proud of, where they can take advantage of the sharing economy and flexibility and getting to buy your workplace as a product, but to get to do it in a way that you were excited to show off to others.
I think the last question I want to ask you to piggyback off of this is regarding courage. A lot of the leaders you see at this conference, and many of them who go to different conferences, for the past 3 years, they had an identity crisis. Like, I knew what I was doing. I was designing these amazing places.
Yeah.
People were coming. I loved it. And then they had to be like, hold off. We're not building more. And then some people started loving remote. And I'm like, and they were like, wait, I love remote, but I used to design offices. Maybe I don't want offices. And they still have to show courage in being true and authentic to what they believe, and then go forth. Also, your own business went through a lot of ups and downs. Did you have to tap into your own courage to stay afloat?
Courage. I mean, it's a very powerful word. I don't think about it that often, and it feels odd to use that to describe yourself. First, I would say, before we get to have I or others had to display courage, I think this point about motivation and feeling great about what you do, you know, there's the Saint-Exupéry quote about if you want people to build a ship, don't tell them where to find wood and tell them how to fasten the joints. You have to make them long for the vastness of the sea. I think even building a business that's around solving problems, you have to believe in the meaning of solving that problem and what it could mean to the world or to your customers if you could do it. And I think heads of workplace are just like anyone else. They have to long for the vastness of the sea, not just focus on how many nails each board needs. And I will say, at least for me, I find the current moment more invigorating and more exciting.
I want to ask one more question because I'm so lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Do people expect when every time they come to your home that will be the most hospitable places? Like, do people keep you to that standard? Like, put you to that standard?
I have it's so funny you ask that. I have a specific theory of hospitality in my own home that I don't know if this tracks for Industrious, but I find that people who want to host their friends for dinner, they get hung up on everything being perfect. Well, if 8 friends are coming over, then I would need the special meat that I can't buy in my local butcher. I'd have to go here, whatever. And then it becomes too much, and they don't do it.
Yeah.
And so actually saying people want to feel welcome, they want to feel warm, they want to laugh, they want to feel comfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, if I'm freaking out because the beef Wellington might be undercooked, that's not a hospitable experience. And so certainly in my own life, I do think me and my wife tend to be the ones, along with one other couple in our group of friends, that host people the most often. But I think people would say, a party at Jaimie's house is really welcoming, it's really fun, it's very warm. I don't think they would say, that's the best, tagliatelle I've ever had in my life. And I think that's okay.
Thank you so much, Jaimie, for such an amazing conversation.
This was great. Thank you.